Hello and welcome back to another episode of Press Play. I am your host, Derek Gerber, and today we have Rick Girard, who is the founder and CEO of Stride Search today. He helps value-driven companies conquer the hire in the world. He also hosts his own radio podcast, but I'm going to let him tell you more about that. So welcome to the show, Rick. Tell the audience more about yourself and what you do with Stride Search and the other things in your life.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Derek. I really appreciate being here. Stride Search is my search firm that I run. I also host a podcast called the Hire Power Radio Show and Podcast, which is all about hiring. I'm just a dude who, I'm passionate about startups and founders of companies being able to attract and hire the strongest people for their companies.
I love it. I love it. And then, you've got so many other things going on. We understand that, you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and also an esteemed offer. Tell us more about those things too.
Midlife crisis got me to doing MMA, and then I kind of made my way into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, I've always been a really active person, and I have to be doing something physical. Otherwise I just go mentally crazy. So, I was fortunate enough to just get awarded my black belt in May after about 8.5 years of a lot of training, 4 or 5 days a week, so yeah, it's a long journey, but well worth it. I still don't feel like I deserve it, but hey, obviously somebody did. And then I in May also put out my first book, which is Healing Career Wounds, and I'll kind of show it to you. And it's basically it's a guide to help entrepreneurs and startups effectively put in a interview process that will drive them to a successful outcome.
That's exciting. So let's start with Stride Search and then work into what inspired you to write that book. It obviously seems that you've spending a lot of this time and energy during the new normal very well. You've been quite productive, my friend.
Yeah, kind of. Well, actually, the book project started about 3, 4. I mean, it's been in the queue for 4 or 5 years, but then I was able to finish it last year with all the stuff that was going on during the pandemic. So, and then get it released. The book was something that I do a lot of executive search, and we help companies at a very high level. And, the problem that I always had is that I don't scale, right? So I'm only good for a couple, clients at a time. But, there's so many companies out there that can benefit from some of the techniques and the solution that we built out. So we call it HireOS, and it's a hiring operating system that you can plug into your business. And so I wrote the book as an easy read that gives somebody the ability to basically take the content. It even has scripts on what to say, how to say it, and why to say it. And it allows somebody to just plug that into their business so they can at least have the opportunity to find their own strongest talent without me, right?
I love that. Well, and that's hard to do too. We could take it so far ourselves so quickly, but if you want to go far and do it for a long time, then you're going to need the right team around you. And having the right people in the right seats is more critical today now than ever with new normal 2.0, 3.0, whatever it is. But we're all working with people all across the world remotely now, and that's the new standard. So it's excellent to know that there's a system in place for that. So let me say, what's the main problem that you found after all your experience, right? You've been writing the book, you've done tons of research on it. What's the main problem that you personally enjoy solving for entrepreneurs? And, why is it that you've chosen to mainly work with startups?
Well, because I think startups don't have any resources. They don't get training. The main problem is the actual interview itself. I mean, we make decisions based on whether or not we like somebody, or whether or not they bring the skills that we need. So we make decisions based on irrational thought patterns that essentially put us in bad positions. And it doesn't really put us in a position where we're setting ourselves up for success or the people we're hiring for success, because they're completely misaligned. So, I read some statistics out there, quite a few years ago, where if you actually just walk into a room with somebody and you said, hey, heads you're hired, tails you're not, and you flip the coin, you actually have a better chance of making a hiring decision, like the right hiring decision, than if you actually run a normal interview process.
If you're not sure, flip the coin. I like it.
I wouldn't recommend that either, but and what it all drills down to is that, at its root, the reason why people either succeed or fail is because they align with the values of the company. Like,
I agree with that. Absolutely. And you're helping strip that back through your content and your approach here. I can hear it all the way from the start too. That's really exciting. And I bet you have some amazing stories. Is there one that comes to top of mind right now? Maybe you can mention the brand name and give them a little hype.
a story about somebody who screwed up hiring.
Well, someone who maybe perhaps considered using your program and was in a going one way type of route and then rerouted themselves into more successful land if using the right team and the tools you have.
Yeah, I mean, like we've just been kind of like just starting to roll this out in a software as a service model that we're building out.
Awesome.
And so, we've been operating. So again, like most of the companies we work with are startups, right? So like, there's really no name brand. I don't really support name brand companies because I'm an entrepreneur and I want my people to succeed. So I'm completely biased about that. Like I want startups to be able to crush it, right? So, we've been operating for clients, and actually some of the clients that we've been, what's happened is we brought in like a VP or somebody like a key player within a company, and then they ask us to like fill some positions below that person, and then we install our interview process into the organization. Then what ends up happening is then they ask us to come train them, like in their interviewers, to be able to conduct the interview properly. So that's kind of been the natural progression of how we've been able to develop this. And we've got some companies that are running at like a 90% success rate in hires, like where they have very little, like, or almost no attrition whatsoever. And like they're stacking the deck with A players.
That's more critical now than ever. Again, we have all got a lot of new expectations on us. And I think what's been interesting is that during the great resignation period, if you would, people are finding that the alignment is more important to them than they ever thought before. Would you care to touch on your thoughts on the great resignation where, whatever is it, 4 or 5 million people have quit their jobs in the last couple months, but everyone's got their own viewpoint on it. What would be yours?
Yeah. And you know what? There's so many people jumping ship because there's so much opportunity, but so here's the thing. People are jumping ship, and there's this opportunity where people are jumping ship because they're just trying to get away from what they have because they don't align again with the values of the company anymore for whatever reason. I found the pandemic, one thing that's not being talked about is there are a lot of people out there that whatever the policies of the company are in and around, the vaccination policy or whatever, right? Whatever those, silence phone, Rick. Sorry. Whatever those policies are, there's a lot of people either side of the fence that are either saying, "Hey, look, I don't want to participate," or nobody's participating, and so I don't really align with this anymore. I don't jive with this, so I need to bounce.
Right.
I need to find a company that will align with me on that, and those things are important to people, and asking those right questions and making sure that you understand the person who's across the desk from you as opposed to just selling a job. That's where people are messing up, and that's what's not working today, right?
Yeah. And here on the show for the audience, we try to connect with the 3 pillars that we have. So awareness, education, and revenue generation. And here I see a lot of the educational side coming to life. How are you packaging this content? You've got your site, you've got the book, you've got the podcast, there are all these different forms of getting the word out there. What are you finding most successful in your patterns in your system of trying to educate people with this content in the new digital era here?
We've been using the podcast for about 4 years to kind of get this message out. The podcast is relatively successful. We're working on trying to like expand it out to build our audience a little bit bigger. But it's, Man, I'm not a marketer. I'm a more of a visionary, and I'm more tactical, and I'm more about like, getting in and solving problems. And to me, like that's where I really shine. So, we've been on the marketing side, we've been working on getting video content out, but you know, we've got a small team that run the podcast, and so again, we're like kind of inundated with work right now. So it's
Busy is good. Busy is good.
busy is
Well,
fantastic.
lots of demand, lots of
Yeah,
people looking to hire the right people. You're large and in charge, my friend. And it's
yeah.
bringing me into my next question here is that why is it important that the interview process be strongly connected to corporate values? And like we're talking about, alignment and everything, but take me down a little deeper on the rabbit hole for that one.
Why it's important that
Yeah.
because at,
Like,
at
why
its
is it more
root,
important today during that interview process to really connect with those corporate values up front and make sure that alignment is absolutely in place? What are you learning from that and teaching
yeah.
other people?
Well, at its root, I mean, if you wanna be successful as a company, people need to be aligned with the values of the company, like at its core, right? Um, and where we kind of drop the ball is we really hire based on our need or what we think we want, or maybe a profile or a behavior pattern of like somebody who has been successful in that role before. But that doesn't really get to that doesn't really serve you well because you're running off again bias, and you're running off of kind of what you think that you need, and it's really not about what you need, it's more about what the business needs, right? And how that aligns with the organization. Plus, people are going to bounce. The truth is, if they don't align with your company, you're going to have them for 3 or 4 months, and they're just going to leave. And I remember, like, I've laughed over the past few years, when everybody started talking about millennials and how they don't stick around. And I'm like, they don't stick around because you're doing a terrible job leading them. Like, you got to provide, like, you've got to be the person who, like, drives culture, drives growth, and keeps people engaged. If you don't know your people and you just give them work and let them like bounce around and don't feed what they really need, then they're going to leave. Right.
And I think that's so important too. And for the audience here today, like we're actually expanding much more into the awareness side of things at the same time. While we have educational programs and digital content being created that helps exacerbate some of the messages here, yes, of course, as best practices. But on the flip side, what you're hearing is people want to hear your culture. People want to hear your core values. People want that also presented to them on the front of the website, on your social media, all the way down into the interview process. And if you're not doing those things, if you're not using video content to go get that done, just like Explainify, right? Then at the end of the day, you're missing the gap. It's the 3 pillars. And if you don't have those covered in whatever industry you're in, then you're missing the ball. And keeping and retaining top tier talent starts at number 1 with awareness and 2 in education, right? Getting that alignment, not about revenue generation today. This one's just purely about talent in the building and making sure that you got happy people in the right seats who align with you. That's what I'm hearing today. Any thoughts on that, Rick?
Yeah, 100%. But wait, that equates to revenue generation. I mean, you should be getting an ROI out of every person you bring on board, right?
We
Like,
didn't
so,
even get to that yet. And all these things filter to those things. And
yeah,
that's what's beautiful is like you're attacking it by doing the other two. I
yep,
think that's what's most impressive.
yeah.
I mean, how often can you find someone who's super enthusiastic and genuine in their work and wants to hustle hard and gets your core value alignment? Once you find those people, there's a relationship to be had, and it's going to be fruitful. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
You're going to have fun, kick butt, and go kick some more butt, from my experience.
Yeah, just don't screw it up, right? Like that's really what it
Right.
boils down to. I mean, you have somebody who's switched on, you got to surround them with more people that are switched on. Otherwise, the unswitched on are going to drive them out.
Other personalities might burn out others if they have a
Yeah,
little too much energy. Not that I know about
yeah,
that.
exactly.
All right. So let's come around the corner on this here. All right. So what are the results that a business or an entrepreneur can have by using the hiring operating system? Like we've been through, you've done this the old way, been through the new way. What would they expect moving forward if they started adopting a system like this? Maybe starting the year.
Well, what you should expect, like first, right off the bat, is that take everything that you think that you know about hiring and just
Yeah.
throw it out and start like you're a newborn baby and you don't know anything. Because the perceptions that we've learned, I mean, most interviews are the same, like interview that like when you were 15 and you went and interviewed at Burger King. Like there's no difference in that. So like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And, there are questions that are asked that seem like smart questions that you can ask somebody, but in reality, they don't tie to anything. They don't tie to your values. You can't evaluate anything for anybody for like that content that they provide for you. So you're not extracting any sort of evidence to support whether or not you should make a decision. So a lot of times, I remember walking out of debriefing a CEO of a company. This was like quite a few years back. And I presented a candidate and I was debriefing the CEO and I said, so what do you think? He goes, oh man, the guy was great. We got to hire him. I go, okay, talk to me. Like, what'd you guys talk about? And he goes, well, we talked about the Oakland A's for about 45 minutes. He's a fan. I'm a fan. We both have the secret, like same. This was the CEO of a company. Like I was baffled. I go, well, hold on. Like this is not like, that was my like kind of wake up moment. This was like quite a few years ago. I'm like, I really have to, like, if I'm going to run searches for people, like they have to understand like how to extract data to understand whether or not this person's right for their organization, not whether or not they like baseball, or whatever commonality that you guys might have. And then, you get things like people throw their own opinions. Like, I don't want somebody out of this school, or I don't want somebody with no education, or, all these little things that we think are valid reasons to pass on people. There's high performers. We come from all different walks of life, right? I didn't finish my education. I went to art school, but I didn't finish. I'm an A player, but there's no way in hell, like, I would get passed on probably if I sent my resume out because I don't have that, degree on my resume.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And like, someone who's got an artistic background, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that firsthand in some other scenarios too. And it's weird that the stigmas that we've had are still dragging through us into the new millennia, if you would. We've crossed into a whole new generation of data collection and trying to use, as much as we can to make the best decisions, yet we still rely on old monikers as our scoring points. Yeah. And while you might feel comfortable with someone in an interview and you can talk about small things or maybe have a beer, are you going to go get the job done? I think that's something that we forget sometimes. We overlook things. We're like, there's no way that person could do it. Well, maybe they've got, a chip on their shoulder and they're out there ready to prove themselves, and all they need is a chance. If there's more opportunity today and people are more able to get more education on their own, you don't even know what is untapped out there across the world, here in the United States, wherever it may be. Your next big talent, your next big, bright bulb idea might be right there in front of you, but you may be overlooking it. And that's what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, definitely. Or, on the flip side, we get myopic about seeing things that we like on a resume. And I think the most valuable piece of a resume is really the white space and the contact information. Because there's, some of the best people that I know won't sit down and write a resume. And like, there's so many A players out there that they don't give a shit about writing a resume. They're not going to do it. They'll just use my LinkedIn profile, right? And
you could just use the LinkedIn for what it's become today. You could even download the resume through LinkedIn just to make it that much faster.
Yeah. And and there's so much information that's not on a resume. It's omitted because you're trying to cram something into 2 pages, right? So, all this. I kind of silently laugh about like all this money that goes into HR tech, where it's all about using AI to pull in the right candidates, to screen resumes, and really like, get you the right candidate. But resumes lie.
Yes, that's a really, really good point. And the more data that we can sift through, the more bias that we can remove, the better business decisions that we're going to make for long term. And when it comes to building the right team, aligning those core values, bringing it to life, and using this particular operating system is the way to go. So my friend, Rick, take us to the end here. Where should people go to find out more about Stride Search, listen to Higher Power, and also check out your book?
Yeah, so you can go to stridesearch.com, StrideSearch.com. We're actually like kind of revamping it. You can find the podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms. It's just Hire Power, and it's HIRE. It's not a religious show. It's all about hiring.
There you go.
And you can go to higherpowerradio.com as well. And then our book is available on Amazon and all the other Barnes & Noble and basically every other provider. It came out in May. And, it's a quick read, and it's designed to for you to sit down on the weekend and be able to have actionable takeaways that you can plug into making sure that you're putting actions into place that are going to pull evidence from your interview as opposed to running off whatever you feel at the moment.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Rick, thanks so much today for joining and sharing your awesome journey and your story. You're a very energetic man, and we love to have folks like you on the show who are help making a big difference and positively affecting people in their lives. So thank you so much for bringing, so much light to the situation today.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for letting me share my message with your audience. I really appreciate it. And hopefully somebody can get value and they can plug it into their organization and they can start hiring really strong people.
That's right. Again, we're after awareness, education, and revenue generation campaigns today. And if there's a interface, a digital format, perhaps a video along the way, we want to bring those stories to life. And we know that you're working on those things. So again, thank you so much. For the audience, you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Listen to another episode of Press Play. I've been your host, Derek Gerber. Check out my friend Rick online, and we will catch you guys later. Thanks so much.